not giving history, but it's giving narrations of stories of old that have strong principles of wisdom for humanity to extract and come to understand. I want to talk about Israeliyat later on. This is the biblical and the Jewish tradition that is accepted within the Islamic practice. Just remind me, just in case I forget. But this is where the details of these stories are matching in the Islamic story tradition as well as in the Judeo-Christian tradition. So you have surah, you have ayah, which means sign, a sign. And the ayah are in the Qur'an 6,300 and a few more. It depends on how the Qur'an is read in the tradition. And then you have the word which is called mushaf. Mushaf. The word mushaf. The word mushaf means scroll. It means scroll. And the idea about the mushaf is that the Qur'an was not revealed in book form, but it was compiled into a scroll or into a book form. Tablet is probably a better translation of mushaf, a tablet. And so you have this word that's introduced in the Qur'an in terms of mushaf is when you have the tradition in Islam to write the Qur'an down, and she deals with it beautifully in her book about how the Qur'an is written down and taken from a very historic practice of memorization and then put into a preservation practice of writing it. I'm going to take a little pause here. I know our time isn't that abundant, but I want to show you all one of the traditions in West Africa. Mauritania, Senegal, Gambia, and Morocco, where they write the Qur'an on tablets as a memorization technique. My daughter's going to pass it around. I don't need it. You can pass it around. And this is something I brought back from my trip earlier this year in Senegal, in a city called Touba, Senegal. And so this is written by a 9-year-old. He finished the entire Qur'an, and I had to pay him for that. But I'm very honored to have that in my possession because it's a long tradition that goes back many generations on how to take a slow and tedious methodical process to memorize the book of God. The beginning of memorization started with Angel Jibril teaching Prophet Muhammad each verse. And in the beginning, he was very hesitant and nervous about forgetting the words of God and not expressing them or repeating them accurately. And so the Qur'an then tells him and really reprimands him, saying, it is God who is revealing it to you, and it is God that will preserve it for you. And so you have this fluency of the Qur'an being revealed, and then he teaches it to the early Sahaba, or the early companions that took on the religious practice. The first of those to accept the religion was of his family. His wife Khadija is the first person to accept Islam. There are just a handful in the first years of Islam that are accepting this new teaching. And of them are the young members of his family, his cousin Ali is one who's 9 years old when he accepts Islam. And there's a story around that where he brings his family over for dinner and he asks them to acknowledge and pay attention to this new message and to accept the religion. And he asks who will. No one raises their hand or acknowledges him. And then the 9-year-old stands and says, I will follow you. I will listen to your message. And this becomes a joke to the rest of the family, that the only one who will listen to you is a child, is a little boy. But later on, Ali is a very historic figure as a scholar in Al-Islam, one who we receive a transmission of the recitation of the Qur'an, and one of the 4 leaders after the Prophet. Also, Bilal. Bilal becomes one of the early people who accepts Al-Islam, who is a slave at that time from Abyssinia. And the system of slavery was well known and accepted in that time period, and many of the slaves heard a new message that proclaimed that all men were equal, and this attracted them to this message. And even through persecution, they kept the message, they kept this idea, and accepted the religion of Al-Islam. The important part about this first early stage when we're talking about the revelation of Qur'an is that it's coming at a time when it's not popular to be something other than a pagan worshiper or an idol worshiper. It is something that is coming at a time where if you don't follow the status quo, or if you don't follow the system and the rules of the land of that time, then you won't make it. Your family will suffer. Your livelihood will suffer. And we see this in the 7th year of the tradition being revealed, that they established through a kind of a back and forth debate on what will they do with this new prophet that's amongst us, who's saying he's the prophet of God. What will we do with him? They make a decision to boycott anyone who accepts the religion of Al-Islam and any person or clan that protects them. So in the previous talk, we talked about clanship and protection. So the verses that are being revealed at this time are talking about your pure faith, your oneness, the identity of the oneness of God being the ultimate and most important idea, effort that you should put and commit your life to. That the one who created all is the one you should give your attention to. The one who is in control of all. It starts talking about the attributes of God. It begins to talk about, even in the opening of the Al-Fatiha, we say, the one who created all worlds. Rabbul Alamin, the one who is the fashioner, the one who is in charge of, the one who is controlling all worlds, all systems, everything that's in place. He is the master over. So this is the one we worship and who can change your condition. This is the one that supersedes the order and the law of the land. And so the verses in the first 13 years, when we look at the Qur'an, is generally divided into two segments or two categories. The first category is that which is revealed in the time period of Mecca, the Mecca time period before they make the migration, and that which is revealed after the migration, the Mediniya time period. So the Qur'an can be looked at, the 114 verses, the 6,300 plus verses, the 114 parts. They can be looked at into two parts, two sections of time in which they're revealed. Circumstances would be the best way to look at it. And the circumstances in the first 13 is a circumstance where the Muslim community they are weak, they are new, they are chastised, they are abused, and they are believing in God, and believing through their suffering they will have redemption, they will have support, and they will have a changing in their circumstances by God's command. And so you have those who are under the pride of the clanship, where they want to support them and they want to help them because of that honor. And then you have those who are converting to Al-Islam because of their belief and their faith. Before the migration, raise your hand if you know about the migration. The Great Migration. Okay? So right before the Great Migration, where was the migration to? Medina. Right. So this is one of the biggest mistakes that everyone makes. The first migration was not to Medina.
Abyssinia.
Where was the first migration?
Abyssinia.
Abyssinia. Where is Abyssinia?
Ethiopia.
In Ethiopia, modern day Ethiopia, a much bigger region. Most of the north, in terms of Sudan, up to Egypt. There's a map on page. There's a map on page 8.
Come on in. Come on down. Come on down front. The 2 chairs down front.
If you turn to page 8, you'll see a map there, and it's showing the surrounding empires around Arabia in the